Right. Welcome to the Canarian International Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mossy and I am an alcoholic.
And my name is Mick. I am also Joint Secretary. Please join us in a moment's silence to remember remember the still suffering alcoholic inside and outside this meeting.
And Anna J is going to read the preamble.
My name's Anna and I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you.
Thank you. The chat is now disabled until the end of the meeting, folks. If you feel the meeting security is at risk at any time, do message one of the co-hosts and that's it, guys. We're here this evening to listen to Gerry. He's after flown in a huge expense into Dublin to join us from the US. Gerry, take it away. You have 45 minutes, 50 minutes. We won't stop you. Just do your thing, man. Thanks a million for joining us.
Mostly, thank you, and thank you everybody for being here today. And I love this program. I have 36 and a half years, a little more, so I'm just not really counting, but I work hard at this program. I have a great life. It wasn't always that way. I started drinking at 12. Remember, I drank a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine. I got so sick that night. I crawled around the party. And I thought to myself, oh my God. And I got home somehow and I woke up the next day. I didn't have a hangover, nothing. But I forgot all about that part, getting sick. I remembered the 15 to 20 minutes when that big hole we have in our chest went away. And I fit in, I was funny, I could talk to the girls, I could dance, all those things that I could never do. And that's the part I remembered. And I've seen my sons grow up and I prayed they didn't have the same experience I did. And thank God so far they didn't. I have 3 children today, a baby girl who's 23, a son 27, and another son 36. That's the guy when his mother got pregnant, I quit drinking. Because I remembered what it was like in my house growing up, and it was not fun. So I was 12 years old, and I drank at that every weekend. On the weekends after the school, and never got in any kind of trouble really. I was at 15 years old. My oldest brother left the house. He ran away from home. He couldn't take it anymore. My father was a raging alcoholic, and my mother, stayed there. I never understood it, and I was so angry with her about it. She said, "Jerry, what did you want me to do? Separate everybody, put them in foster homes?" And I never got that till then, and I never got to really, I was so angry about what happened to us and how all these things go on with us and how we pick up this addiction. All my brothers were addiction, heroin, alcohol, all that stuff, cocaine, and I was just talking about it earlier today that every time we went to my father died very young. I was 18 years old. My father died. I remember I used to come home and he had got some type of asbestosis in his lungs. He was dying of cancer. And I used to bring him. My mother couldn't drive, so I used to come home and take him to the hospital for chemo and then bring him home and, go about. I left the home too at 17. And so he called me into the living room that day and he said, "Listen, son, if you can't live in my house under my rules, get your hair cut, get home, and I want you to get home and do the things I want you to do." He said, "I'd rather crawl to the hospital on his hands and knees." And I remember that day I went to the kitchen. My mother was washing the dishes, and I said bye. And I jumped over the fence, and I left. I hadn't seen him again for a few months. He died, and I, went to the funeral and all that. And this rage, this anger, this fear, this loneliness that was alcoholics give their kids. It's horrendous. It's terrible. I mean, just hear that emptiness, loneliness, fear, anger, and all the most terrible things you could ever imagine. And so obviously, we have this addiction, we have this dysfunctional, we never got the tools we needed. And so drinking kind of just numbed us out the pain and we felt somewhat normal. So I started fighting at 15 and a half. My brother was a fighter and I went to the gym. I loved my brother. He was 3 or 4 years older than me. He's sober today. He's got a beautiful wife, a couple of kids. I helped during times, put him in rehab and all that stuff, and went through a lot, both of them. And we're very close now. The rest of my family, I lost 3 siblings in the last 7 or 8 years, all younger than me. And my other brother, I had to call the police and tell him to stop reaching out to me and stop reaching out to my wife and to my children. He was in pain and he wanted to blame it on me. And so I took him to court and they said, okay, we're going to give you a year off. We'll come back after a year. When we came back after a year, the judge said, how do you feel? I said, I like the way it is. I don't want to have any contact with this guy because my family really is in my home. My wife and 2 kids in my home. By the way, I have a great wife. I have great children. And I want to say I'm retired, but I'm on the radio, Sirius XM, a couple of days a week. I just wrote a book. I make a lot of appearances. I train people. I got a lot of things going on, right? I worked a program. I got a bunch of sponsees. It's all about love and service. So I'm drinking all my life. At 19 years old, I want to just tell you the story. I'm over in Europe. I'm in England, Ireland, and someplace else. I have 4 fights over there. And I knocked 4 guys out cold, right? I come back to America and I get a phone call from the president of the Olympic Committee. He tells me, Jerry, listen, there's an all-Russian heavyweight team coming to the Garden. Would you like to fight in that card? I said, well, sure, I would. So they heard the news about me knocking everybody out. They wanted to see me, right? So I said, that was early in the summer. No one called me. I was drinking all summer with my friends. 6 days before the fight, I get a phone call that do I want to fight? I said, sure. I'm fighting the 3rd ranked Russian heavyweight champ. I go to the Garden. This guy was 6 foot wide by 6 foot tall. Man, he was a beast. I thought, man, this guy is going to kill me tonight. I only trained for 6 days. But I always like when I got in the ring and the bell rang, when you got close to me, I was going to hit you with something, let you know you can come in my house if you want. But if you come in, this is what you're going to get. And I hit him with a perfect left hook on the chin and I knock him out cold, right? Thank God, because had I gone to the second round, the guy probably would have killed me because I wasn't in really great shape, right? So I go home, next couple of days, I get a phone call from the president of the Olympic Committee who tells me this was 1976, that I made it to the finals of the Olympic trials. And that's where the top 8 guys or 10 guys goes up to Colorado Springs and they fight it out for 2 weeks. And the top 2 guys goes to the Olympics. And I tell the guy, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it. Can you believe this? What do you mean, Jerry? This is the Olympic finals, the final of the Olympics. I said, my father's sick. I hated my father. I didn't believe in myself. I had no confidence that I could. What am I going to go make an ass of myself for, right? I've done all this rage. Every time I got in the ring, when the bell rang, I was rage. I was filled with rage, but I had no self-esteem. I wasn't confident. So he asked me 3 times. He said, Jerry, are you sure? I said, yeah, I can't. I'm sorry. He hung the phone up. I watched the Olympics that year, at home. Now, maybe I could have made it. Maybe I wouldn't have made it. But I never got the experience that happens to us. We always missed out when the big play comes along. We don't show up. I'm too busy. I'm not available. That's what happens. That's been the story of my life. So I missed the Olympics. I turned pro. I embarked on a professional boxing career. Hooked up with a couple of guys, real estate guys, and I start fighting, and I'm getting good. I'm 15-0. I'm 17-0. All of a sudden, I'm going to be fighting Kenny Norton in the Garden. you know, at my home arena. And the winner gets a shot at Larry Holmes for the heavyweight championship of the world. I probably believe if I fought Holmes that night, I probably would have beat him. That's how great a shape I was in. I was straight, I was clean. You know, I found out years that in order for the car to run right, you got to change the oil once in a while. You got to change the antifreeze. And if you do, but if you're drinking and smoking and doing those things, it's just not going to work. But, you know, we think we can do it. I'll handle it. I'll take it easy. So I get turned pro. I knock out Ron Lyle in the Coliseum. I knock out Jimmy Young in 4 rounds. I cut him open, and and so I'm getting a shot with Kenny Norton in the Garden. I'm making $1.25 million. I'm the best shape of my life. Believe me, I'm telling you. And I get into the ring, and I'm thinking, oh man, this is Mandingo. Here's the guy. When the bell rings, I go over. I look him over. I hit him with a right hand to the body, and he buckles. So when you're a pro and you do that and the guy buckles, you say, well, let me take 30 seconds and open up on this guy, see if I can get him out of here, right? I spin him into the corner. I catch him with an uppercut. He goes limp. He's sitting on the ropes. He's sleeping, the guy. I wasn't sure, but I think he was snoring. And the referee is letting the fight go on. So finally, 54 seconds into the first round, they stopped the fight. You know, the next day on every piece, cover of every newspaper, 4 or 5 newspapers in New York, it said 4 punches from death. And I believe it. I still don't like to watch that fight today. You know, I was such a, you know, I can't tell you the things went through my mind. So here I am that night. I'm ranked #1 in the world. I'm going to get a shot at Larry Holmes for the heavyweight championship of the world. You think I would have said, well, I better get a good trainer, a great nutritionist, a condition coach. I'm fighting for the heavyweight championship, right? Guess what happened to me? Had an old high school girlfriend from Wilhelmina who brought a bag of cocaine and I had a bottle of scotch. And that night, I drank that bottle of scotch down. And that's what happens to us. Threw it away. Whether it was fear, whether it was I'm not good enough, whether it was this is too big for me. I was not prepared for this. I didn't have anybody in my corner. I never trusted a soul. Because all I did was get hurt. And so I go into training and, you know, don't need to tell you, it's difficult. You get 4 or 5 or 6 sparring partners every day. They're in the gym. They're all, while I'm in there with one of them, there's 4 other guys looking at me, trying to find my mistakes out. And I got to stay ahead of those guys. But I'm drinking and partying at that time, right? So finally, the June 11th, 1981-82 comes along, June 11th, and I fight Larry Holmes in Las Vegas in the biggest fight in the history at the time. It was $10 million a piece. And I get stopped in the 13th round because I wasn't changing the oil. I wasn't checking the antifreeze. The tank ran low. All those things that happens to us. And, you know, obviously I made the money, but that wasn't, if you knew what I lived with the last 40 years, or I shouldn't say 40 years, 20 years of the shame and how I never really got to prove how good I was because I was drinking and playing, and the moment got so big for me, I didn't trust it. And I thought, my father always told me, you're never going to make it. You're a failure. And I was always trying to prove that wrong. And I think I drank at it. So in case I did lose, it wasn't because of me. But it doesn't matter. It happened. I lost the championship. I got stopped in the 13th round. It was 120 degrees. I got a lot of excuses for you, but he was a great champion. He was a great fighter. I was proud to be in there with him. He and I are great friends now. A lot of those great guys that I knew all those years, they're struggling now with dementia and struggle with all these health problems that, you know, they can't walk anymore. It's like, damn, you know, it's kind of a little scary, right? And so you know, obviously I'm sober since April 21st, 1988. So I mean, listen, I go to the doctor, I do the things I need to do. And I remember when I was a kid, old guys used to say, listen, man, you can't be a sissy and get old. I thought, what are you talking about? You got it made, you retire, you sit out, you do what you want. No, you got to go to the doctors. You know, all those commercials that we never heard when we were young, talking about, oh, this problem and that problem, this problem. Then you start hearing all that. And then, you know, I've had a couple of things happen to me. So I worked this program. I met a great sponsor. I prayed for a sponsor. I came around the rooms and I remember this guy picked me up. He traveled like an hour and a half and came to my house. Anyway, I woke up one morning at 20 minutes to 11 at this beautiful home in the Hamptons, East Hampton, where I lived. Had a second home there by myself. Big pool, jacuzzi, was on the beach. I had the whole thing, right? By myself. And I was hungover. I was 20 minutes to 11. I got scared that day. I thought, my God, what happened to you, right? So I said, you know what? I'm going to quit. I'm going to get my life back on track. I'm going to get going again. I'll get a couple of fights maybe. And next morning, 20 minutes to 11, guess what? I wake up again hungover. And that's the day I cried out to God. I turned on the television and it happened to be Alcohol Awareness Week in the Hamptons. It's too good to be true. And George Benedict was talking about things that happen to us and what we do. And it was like, it was all about me. And I'm saying, you got to be kidding me. So I called that guy and I took a ride to see him. And he showed me around this Seafield Center. I was like, man, you got to sleep in a room with 6 other men, stinking old men. And, so that wasn't for me. So he said, you don't have to stay here. He said, you go to meetings. And if you can't make it out there, he said, I'll always have a room for you. So thank you, George. I shook his hand. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I left. And he used to meet me at meetings, like in halfway from West Hampton to East Hampton, where I was. And we go to meetings every night. And before you know it, I was doing push-ups, pull-ups. I was riding this race bike 40, 50 miles a day. I felt like Superman, right? And I'm going to this meeting. This guy starts picking me up, driving an hour and a half to my house, picking me up and saying, what is this guy doing? What is he doing? Why is he doing this for me? And so after, 5 or 6 days, I said, listen, why are you doing this for me? He said, Jerry, I want to stay sober. I come here and pick you up and bring you to a meeting and come home. I'm sober. And I have chills when I just tell you that. And I was very friendly with him for so long. And so I'm going to meetings regularly. And around 3 months into that sobriety, his sister, Toinette, tells me, listen, you better be careful. Looks like you're going to drink again. I said, are you crazy or something? I'm sober. I'm going to meetings. I'm pushing ups, pull-ups. I'm hitting the bag. I got it made. And about 5 months into that sobriety, I meet this little girl. She was a French girl. She was saying, oui, oui. And that sounded so nice to me at that particular time, right? And I thought, man, the alcohol was just probably coming out of my system. And she was beautiful. And the next thing you know, she wanted me to move to the city. I wasn't doing any of that, but I got distracted and I didn't do anything the first night. Sixth night, I had a joint and I drank. And then after a month, I was drinking like I used to drink. So at the end of that, whatever it was, 2 or 3 months, this girl that I was with took me to the beach. And I was depressed. I was feeling lousy, like, what's going on? And she built me a sandcastle at that beach. It's right in front of me. It was so beautiful. And that was like around the time when, I could not love. I could not be loved. I didn't have that. When you told me you love me, I got to go. I could try to fly to Florida. I had a place in California, had a place in New York, all these different places, because I just I didn't believe I deserved. And so I'm driving to work one day at my office, buddy's driving. We stop at this old pancake house where I used to, we used to cut out of school when we were kids and go have breakfast and then go back to school. And Jack Burnett, New York was there. He just died. He was the greatest guy in the world, John. He collected money for the mob. He ran a strip joint. He could burn a cigarette out on the top of his hands. He was like the baddest guy I knew. He was a bodyguard of mine in my days when I was fighting. And he was in that restaurant that morning. And he said, Jerry, come sit down with me. Come on, sit down here with me, will you? And I sat down at the table because I love the guy, right? He said, Jerry, today I'm celebrating 3 years. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 3 years. He said, you know, you never have to drink again. And I said, oh, Jack, that's not going to work for me. I tried. It's not going to work. He said, just get a sponsor. Find a sponsor. I said, that don't work for me. I had 3 sponsors. And so, but I left him that day and I called and I found a sponsor. It was put in my life. And we talk about the higher experience, right? The God of our understanding. You know, I'm going to tell you this, right? I don't think that the God of our lives is talked about enough from here. God saved my life. I pray to God every day. I go to mass. Anyway, I want to stay focused where I'm at. So I get a sponsor and I travel from where I live into New York City, which is a couple of hours once a week, and I work on the steps. And you know, I'm finding out all about these things about myself. And I found out through the steps. I wrote my first step out. I read the first 17 pages in the big book, from the opening book through Bill Wilson's story, the doctor's opinion. And I wrote my story out. Everything since I was a kid, what happened, going on, how I failed, how I success. I mean, I had a great life. Believe me, it did not suck being Jerry Cooney. Everybody wanted a piece of me back in the days. I should hope you guys get that one time. Life is great. And I wrote out my story. And what I found out in that first story, like reading a book about myself, was that I wasn't broken. I was bruised. I was supposed to be bruised. I didn't have anybody. I didn't trust a soul. You know, you go to my house for holiday times. I had 5 brothers and sisters. We all drank or did drugs. My poor mother. We didn't feel. We couldn't feel. And so I went to detox with that guy, Jack Burnett, New York, one time. And I was early sobriety, probably, I don't know, 5 months or so. And there was like 80 men there, disheveled men. And he said to them that day, he said, listen, guys, most of you are not going to make it by this time next year. And I thought to myself, my God, how could you tell these guys, they only got pants on for crying out loud, you're not going to make it, right? So after the meeting, I say, Jack, love you, buddy. Why would you say that to them? Do you know what he told me? He said, because it's the truth. And I thought to myself in that moment, man, that chair right there is mine. That's my chair. Don't get in my chair. And you know, as we get a little more time together and we have the strength, you know, I'm becoming healthy and I'm going to more meetings and, you know, I avoided, I tried to make believe and, you know, sneak this and don't do that and don't call this guy and don't do that step. And what we find out is that we got this. If I had cancer, I would go do everything that was indicated for me to do to treat it. If I had sugar diabetes, I would do everything that was indicated for me to do because there's nothing like life for me. And so I made a commitment to the program and I worked through the steps. And, you know, I was chasing women like everybody was chasing women and men, whatever we do, one of those defects of character. And through life, what happens to us is that we become aware of those defects and then they stop working for us. Like after it happened, the defect, whatever it was, I'd feel lousy. And then during the defective character, I would feel lousy. And then before the defective character, I felt lousy about it. I wouldn't do it. Slowly but surely. And I started working that with the help of God and great sponsorship, who I believe have been put in my life. I have had a fire with one guy that He was the best thing that ever happened to me. But he started asking me, can he borrow my house in the Hamptons and could I loan him $15,000? And you learn in the program that that's not really great, especially when he's your sponsor. And I don't know to this day, did I set him up for that? Or did he give it to me? I mean, and so I left him, I had to fire that guy. And a couple of years later, he called me and asked me if I'd come back out and speak for him in the Hamptons. So I took the ride. It was like 3.5 hours from the city. And I went out there and spoke for him, and I went and made amends with him and talked to him. And doesn't matter. You know, I'm sure I was testing people. Could I trust? You know, we go through this process of so many different things to try and get safe. And then I meet the beautiful girl, get her to like me, get her to love me. She looked so good. She smelled good. But when the dust settled, she was crazy. Because I was crazy. I was picking her because I figured I could handle this. I could fix her and make it better. And she's thinking the same thing about me. So then we're spending 6-8 months trying to get out of it. And then the next one again. And then the next one again. And then the next one again. And, you know, I mean, this is the insanity of alcoholism. And in those times, I forgot about God. I didn't think about, ask God, do you think this is right for me or that's right for me? No, I didn't want to feel how raw I felt. I was raw, empty. You know, I'm the guy that you don't want to really get me mad. You just don't want to do that. Hasn't happened to me many times, but when it does, you don't want to be opposite for me. And so I did a lot of work, man. I always loved God, and I'd say, God, please get me out of this one. I'll never do it again. Most of the times he did, and then there were times he didn't. And I'd say, God, you left me. That's a story about the guy walking down the beach, and there's 2 sets of footprints. And during his most troubling times, there was only 1 set of footprints. He said, God, you left me. He said, no, my son, that's when I was carrying you. That's the story for me. And I get close with God right away every day. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God is a great prayer. I read books. I'm reading a book called I'm reading a great book right now. I recommend for you guys. It's Divine Therapy. And it's an addiction. And it's from the steps and from centering on prayer. Thomas Keating, one of the best books I've ever read about the program and the steps and what's right and what's wrong, how Bill Wilson, how he put it together. And I've been reading books since this pandemic. I have about 50 books out there that I have 3 or 4 men from around the country that we read at 9:30 every morning. And we read a paragraph, or not a paragraph, excuse me, a chapter, and then we talk again tomorrow. Sometimes it's only twice a week, sometimes it's 5 times a week. Because this is what I got. This is me. I don't got something else. I want to be there. I want to be in my lane when it comes along for me. So, you know, talking about God right now, you know, my God is always there for me. I have to have a relationship with him, not just today and take off a few days. I got to pray on it. And when I have trouble or strife and I put God in the picture of me, it always ends up better than what I thought it would be. It always turns out to be better. And we can be lazy. You can work the program 30%. You can work at 50%. It's fine. If that's what you want. Man, I tell you what, not me. And I've been blessed with a new sponsor. I got people in my life who I love. I have men that I'm intimate with. You know, I stayed away from relationships for a year. Went to Africa, went to Central America, and I got to know about myself. When I played golf, I did all these things, right? And I made that commitment to myself. And when I came back from somewhere, I was living in Florida in the wintertime, a friend of mine got a job at this accounting firm, BDO Seidman. And he calls me and he puts me on the phone with this girl. I have a nice conversation with her. It was nice. I said, you know, when I come back to New York, we'll have lunch. So about 3 months later, I went back to New York. We met. That day, we walked down the street holding hands. That was 36 years ago, right? That's what the deal is. Not 36 years ago, excuse me. That was 30 years ago. I took a lot of shots. It's hard to remember. You know what I mean? I got tried. So anyway, listen, I want to tell you something. I got the greatest life in the world, but it's not like it's easy. It's not easy. It's not easy for me. I have to listen to sick people in Zoom meetings. I have to listen to the craziness. I have to keep, my sponsor keeps telling me, try to get to more live meetings, face to face. And I'm doing it. I go to Al-Anon a few days a week because I suffer from codependency. You understand? We all have it. And I want to be available to my wife. I don't want to control. When I first was living in the city with my wife, I took it to my therapist, and the therapist he said, can you understand that Jerry needs a little bit extra? That's what he told her. She wanted to throw me and him out the door. We are needy people. And in time, we learn to take care of that need ourselves. And it's about, I used to want it to be patted on the back all the time. Now it's the act that we do. When I bring a kid to my gym who's suffering from being bullied and beat up and not feeling good, he smiles and he walks out of my gym 6 inches off the ground. That's my payoff. When I get off the phone and I think, where did that come from? How did I say that? And that's the God in my life. I get chills when I say that. Do you understand? Like, these are gifts we have. We have to be in it. We have to fight for it. You know, I was here during this pandemic doing 4 meetings a day, plus Al-Anon a couple of days a week. My wife was saying, you got this earphone in your ear the whole time. And I talked to my sponsor, but I said, he was doing the same thing during the pandemic. He said, cut it out. So I'm going to one AA meeting a day. I'm going to 3 Al-Anon meetings a week. I'm reading books. Hey, who's that handsome guy, Peter, over there? That's my man right there, bro. And I'm helping people every day. I have a radio show on Sirius XM that, you know, I promote goodwill. I promote love. It's all about boxing, but it's about life and love and struggle and strife and disappointment and joy and all those things. If I stay in it, I get it. Sometimes I have to let people go. Sometimes I say I can't help you no more because when it starts to affect me, but I pray on it. And you got another half hour with me. How are you going to take it? I'm just kidding, just joking with you. So you understand, like, we are so blessed to have this second shot, to be able to really love. You know, I love my wife. My wife told me last week the best part of her day is when we go to bed at nighttime. I swear. And I thought about that the next day, and I thought to myself, yeah, me too. Right? My children came over yesterday. My son graduated from a great university. He told his boss, he's an engineer, he's putting up windmills in the water. He said, listen, how we came up with 33%, I'll never know. He said, I need a 33% raise. And his boss said, well, I don't know if we can do that. Next day, the boss came to him and said, listen, we're giving you 33%. Right? Now, that's not my brain, but that kid is so smart. And we were able to give that to him. My father told me, he yelled at me and screamed at me and beat me up and pushed me around. Said, get out of here, go to college. I went to college. I didn't know where to go, who to see, what to do. I came home. And this is what recovery is about. This is who I am today. I still could have beat that Jake Paul. Let me tell you that right now. I'd have kicked his ass myself. And I'm older than Tyson. I just turned 35. What are you guys laughing about for? What the fuck is that about? You understand? Listen, we're so blessed that we have each other. That I'm pulling for you and you're pulling for me. Do you understand that? And I hope to come on with you again. I hope to meet you again. One time I was feeding the homeless in New York City, and this guy was reaching under the table for a bottle to drink. I said, listen, you can go to AA. You don't have to drink no more. And a year later, I'm walking down the street. This guy came up to me. He said, I celebrated 1 year sobriety. A homeless man. These are the gifts that we're given. I give to people. I give because that's what we're supposed to do. Can you help me? That's what the first thing I said when I went to. I heard someone say that. Can you help me? I've been saying that ever since. And I'm saying it to you, that we fight for each other. We struggle for each other. We pull for each other. That's what my life is about. I'm a grown man because of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. And all right, once every 3 weeks, I go to therapy. Well, I'm putting it all on the table. And I love my life today. Thank you.
Gerry, thank you so much. My daughter was after coming up to Dublin so I'm after flying over from Lanzarote to spend the evening with them. So tomorrow morning I fly back another 1,800 miles back home. And that's because of this fellowship. And I walk into the hotel and there's 4 ladies waiting inside the fire for me. And I got hugged and kissed and everything. That isn't the way my life was. I love being sober. Absolutely love being sober. And life has knocked me back time and time again. But I'm able to get up one more time. And that's, for me, that's what it's all about. I was inside in the guy's house one night and he said to me, Mossy, he said, 3 out of every 118 make it. And I leaned forward to him. I said, Jimmy, I said, can I be one of them? He said, you can, Mossy. And I'm over 35 years clean and sober. And Jimmy died sober, and the other guy inside in the room is still out drinking, in and out and in and out. But I'm blessed to be here because of this fellowship, because of a God that I don't understand, and the instruction manual, which is our big book, and doing a bit of service. Gerry, thanks so much for joining us this evening. You're keeping me sober today, and I love to be able to carry this message. So, Nick, you want to take over there, man?
Love
Yeah,
you,
I can
Mousy.
do,
Thank you
Mossy.
very much for that, Mousy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerry.
I only saw 3 women in there with you. You're just like all alcoholics. Got to have one more. Gerry, thank you for sharing. I identified a lot with what you were talking about, you know. They used to say to me, if you get in the ring with a bottle, Mick, you always come out the loser. And that's how it was with my drinking. Once I had one, I always went down, lost things, you know. But I love the recovery. I talk about recovery and the family and friends and how we make amends and we learn to love. That's what I love about this program. I bumped into a mate's son today as I was walking my dog, and we were chatting. He's a prison officer, and I was chatting to him, and I said to him, "What do you do in the prisons, Paul?" And he gave me this great big long name. I can't even remember what it is, what he does. And I said, "Well, it's a big word, Paul. What's it mean?" And he says, "Well, part of my job is talking to the prisoners, and you know, they say the judge locked me up, and then I say to them, but why did the judge lock you up?" And they'll say, because of, and he says, yeah. And what he's trying to do is get them to identify what their problem is, just like AA. And I said, that's just like AA, you know, we're powerless over certain things, drink and people. And he said, that's what I'm teaching them. It's the program of AA in a different way. And I felt so proud of him. You know, he's not my son, but I knew him as a kid. He was always in trouble. And there he is helping others in a different way. And that's what our job is, isn't it? In this fellowship, is help another person to get well. You know, and I loved what you said, Jerry, and thank you for being here and sharing.
Go on, Mick.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what script you're on, Mick, but you're getting it
Oh,
wrong.
right. Hold it. Well, I'm just making you look good, ain't I, Mossy? You know, you've got birds with you. You have the, you know. Right. I don't know why we got a script. Look, all the coloured ones are mine, and Mossy's reading the coloured ones.
Yeah, I'm colourblind at
I'm
the
not
moment,
going to have
Mick.
you know, stick around for fellowship after the meeting. If you want to use a breakout room after the meeting, please let the hosts know.
And the other card. Who you see here?
What you hear here,
When you leave here,
let it stay here.
there you go, guys.
God bless you, Mossy. A safe journey.
Thanks, Mick. Thanks for everything. Thanks, Jerry. Will you lead us out with this friendly prayer, my friend?
I'd be glad to. A moment of silence for still suffering inside and outside the rooms. Call those people you haven't seen in a while. Maybe they'll come back. God.
Right,
to accept the things that are changed, courage to change the things that come, wisdom to know the truth, life without.
That was terrible. That was
Thanks,
terrible.
everybody.
In order, in unity.